Okay. I will be ready. You tell me when to say something and I'll say it. All right. I'm taking mine too. They probably know who I am. I'm up here all the time, right? They know who I am. They know who you are. Yeah. Come on. They know who I am. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club, where we explore public policy issues, current events, and lessons in leadership at forums like this one every week. I'm Deb Hackathorn in the Government Relations Practice Group with Frost Brown Todd. I'm also proud to serve as the chair of the CMC Board of Trustees. For those of you joining us by live stream today, we're coming to you from our beautiful home in Columbus, historic Italian village, the Ellis. If you scan the QR code at your tables, you can read bios of today's panelists, take a short survey, a bio of the governor, of course, and see the many organizations that support your not-for-profit Columbus Metropolitan Club. Speaking of sponsors, we would like to thank today's sponsors: ACT Ohio, Cardinal Health, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, The Ohio State University, Public Sector Consulting, and WOSU Public Media. Thank you so much for sponsoring today's forum. We're also grateful to the presenting sponsor of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and to our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch. And thank you to the Ellis, of course, for hosting us. Every CMC forum takes a village. Let's thank everyone for supporting today's forum. Okay, the governor told me to keep it short, and I told him that's the only way I know how to do anything, obviously. We are absolutely thrilled to bring today's forum to you today. On April 10th, Governor Mike DeWine delivered his State of the State address to a packed State House crowd. His remarks touched on his recent accomplishments, but also highlighted his hopes for the next steps that state lawmakers might take on key issues, including programs that are intended to improve infant care, create school-based health clinics, and improve access to quality childcare. Today, we're going to unpack the governor's State of the State address for a look at what Ohio's bright future might hold. It is my great honor to welcome to CMC the governor of the state of Ohio, the Honorable Mike DeWine. And we're thrilled to re-welcome our host, who has been with us before, reporter and producer for the Statehouse News Bureau, Jo Ingles. Take it away, Jo.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And secondly, I want to get right straight into it because I know we have a lot of questions and things to talk about. So, Governor, first question, your State of the State, it was full of plans that affect kids, expanding childcare and mental health care, improving literacy, working to lower infant mortality rates. The legislative leaders, though, are not talking about many of these ideas. They've questioned whether Ohio can afford some of these things. Have you talked to Speaker Jason Stephens and Senate President Matt Huffman about these plans? And can an Ohio afford it?
Well, Joe, thank you very much. Good to be with all of you. I talk to the Speaker, I talk to the Senate President a lot. They talk to me, I talk to them, so we certainly have communication. Look, I made a decision, a very conscious decision, to devote my entire State of the State speech this year to the issue of children. You know, as I look at the future of the state of Ohio, there's just nothing more important than early childhood education, making sure that our children have the ability to live up to their God-given potential. We're creating jobs faster in this state than we have people to fill them. But yet we have in Ohio and in other states, you know, a lower birth rate than we've had in the past. And it's just important for every child, every person, that they live up to their full potential. But it also, that happens to coincide with what is best for all of us in the state. Someone graduates from high school and is not on a pathway, we need to get them on some pathway, even if they change that pathway. If Fran was here, she would tell you I changed my pathway about 7 or 8 times. But when we got married, she thought I was going to be a social studies teacher, and I did too. But nothing wrong with changing your plans. But the point is, this is our future, and we need to focus on. Part of the job of the governor, I've kind of taken a quote from John Kennedy. One of the things that Kennedy said that struck with me, stayed with me, he said, the job of the president is to lay before the American people the unfinished business of the country. I think the job of the governor is to lay before the people of the state of Ohio the unfinished business of the state. We've made a lot of progress with the help of the legislature in all the areas that you just mentioned. We've come a long way in the last 5 years, but we still have a long, long way to go. And we have to focus on our kids, focus on the future.
So during the past 4 months or so, lawmakers have overridden 2 of your vetoes. Do you feel at odds with Ohio's legislative leaders when it comes to achieving some of the things that you asked for in your State of the State?
No, look. There's some areas where we have disagreed, but if you look at, you know, I learned long ago that public policy flows, frankly, with money. And if you don't have the money, the policy doesn't usually take place. And we in Ohio, of course, the money flows through our budget. And the budgets that I have presented to the General Assembly, we've gotten 95, 96, 97% of what I've asked for. And I've asked for some things that were not done, being done in the past. You know, our focus on mental health. We're trying to catch up. We're trying to live up to, again, what Kennedy said when he signed the Community Mental Health Act 60 years ago. And that is that every no matter where you lived in the United States, you would have access to mental health. We're trying to live up to that. But we've invested significant money in the last 5 years. The legislature has agreed to do that. That would not have happened. H2 Ohio, which started out primarily, how do we keep Lake Erie clean? How do we deal with the long-term problem of agricultural runoff? How do we deal with the algae bloom? And the legislature has, at our request, has given us virtually everything we've wanted in that area. And we've expanded that to include how do we keep water clear and pure throughout the state of Ohio. We're spending over $100 million a year to do that. That was not done at all before H2 Ohio. There are things that were done, but this is an entirely new program. So I'll just stop there. But we've had thing after thing where I've asked the legislature, help us go do this, and we've been able to do it. The high profile, Joe, the high profile things, yes, we've disagreed on some things. And sometimes they've overridden me and sometimes they've not. And we may disagree in the future. But on the essential things that the average Ohioan cares about: their family, their kids, their safety, their future. This legislature has been with me on virtually every one of those things.
As you well know, there's been a leadership fight in the Ohio House during the past year and a half.
Really?
And it appears it's going to intensify going into the end of this year and the coming months. What effect is this having on your ability to get your plans through the legislature?
Well, I found long ago that, if you're in public office or whatever you do, you take the world as you find it and you try to, achieve your objectives. And so, we've had changes in the legislature. We'll have probably more changes as we move along. The other thing that I do feel very strongly about, and I respect, our division and our separation of powers and our checks and balances. And the legislative branch, the governor should not be telling the House who to have a speaker. We shouldn't be telling the Senate who to have a Senate president. That is not what I should be getting involved in, and so I don't.
Democrats in the legislature were critical that your State of the State speech didn't mention gun violence. Why didn't you? And now that we see a bill in the Ohio legislature that would increase penalties for repeat violent firearms offenses with mandatory prison times and reforms that you have advocated for in the past, but lawmakers wouldn't accept at the time, tell us where you stand on that legislation.
Well, as you just pointed out, I've talked about this. You've heard me talk about it probably dozens and dozens of times. And the underlying reality is that if you look at crime in the state of Ohio, you look at people who commit felonies in the state of Ohio, the people who commit violent crimes is a small percentage of those felons. And so if we want to protect people, we have to go after these repeat violent offenders who just continue to commit violent offenses. And frankly, we have to lock them up and we have to remove them from society. Same way in regard to, someone who is using a gun to commit a crime. We have law in Ohio that says that if you have committed a crime of violence, and it defines in the code what that is, you can no longer have a gun. And what I've advocated for is to give judges more authority if someone is convicted of having a gun when they've already been convicted of having committed a violent offense. I think the judge should be able to throw the book at them and lock them up because they're the people who are causing most of the crime. So look, I support the broad concept of the bill. I haven't looked at all the language of it, but this is exactly the thing that I've been talking about.
Okay. During your administration, you've taken local control away from communities when it comes to reforming education. You said in your State of the State that you want to pass uniform statewide laws banning vaping and cigarettes. You said that you want lawmakers to pass a bill making seatbelt violations a primary offense. Are you going too far in taking local control away from local governments?
Well, first of all, let's talk about seatbelts. We have uniform. We don't have really local laws in this area, not very much. We have uniformity in regard to how we keep our highways safe. So I don't think that's inconsistent with local control at all. I went to the legislature and asked them for a number of times, and we finally were able to get it done, and that has to do with distracted driving. We've already saved a number of lives, and a lot of accidents have been avoided because of fewer people who are being distracted. And we have more to do. We have more education to do, but we've already made great progress in that. Joe, in regard to seatbelts, this is the easiest vote anybody will ever take that I will guarantee that it will save hundreds, thousands, ultimately thousands of lives if we have a mandatory seatbelt law. We're one of the few states that does not. Just look at the data. The national average of seatbelt use in this country is 90%. Ohio's at 80%. And so, we can just do the math and extrapolate that. So it's the next step. It's the next thing we can do to keep our highways safer. other areas, you ask a lot of questions there.
I know, I'm sorry about that.
It's multiple questions. Look, let's talk about one of the biggest dangers in regard to health for kids, and that is that they become addicted to nicotine. The way kids are getting addicted to nicotine today in the state of Ohio and across the country is primarily through vaping, and vaping of flavors. Kids start down the pathway with flavors. Vast majority, 80-some%. If you want to stop kids, slow kids down from starting to vape and then get on that pathway of that addiction of nicotine, simply the way to do it is to do away with flavors. I wish, frankly, the Biden administration would do it. They have the opportunity to do it. They should do it. We should do it in Ohio. Our first real action, though, in regard to the legislature was when the legislature said that Columbus and Bexley and other communities should not have the power to control that. And I sided with the local community because I think that we've not been able to get a statewide ban on this passed. We ought to let the local communities to do it. But my preference is to have a statewide ban. And that will save lives. And, there'll be kids today who are not addicted and who now are getting addicted and whose lives are shortened. And they may be dying, 20, 30 years prematurely way down the road. But we know that if you get a kid, somebody gets to be 21, 22, the odds of them starting are not great. So it's that crucial period of time, and where they're getting addicted is in regard to flavors. Get rid of the flavors, and you will eliminate most of the problem.
You have said that the current redistricting process isn't working, and that you don't think the governor or politicians should be on the redistricting commission. Will you campaign for citizens, not politicians, the amendment that's being proposed if it makes the ballot?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting if you go back. The last thing that we had in regard to redistricting rules, Democrats and Republicans supported at the ballot box. Everybody was out, not everybody, but virtually everybody was out publicly in favor of it. And to my mind, it didn't work very well. It finally worked, but we kind of went through some real agony. And I guess it's my personal choice to never be involved in that again. So maybe I have a little bias in don't wanting elected officials involved in it, because I sure don't want to be involved in it again. But so my position is it didn't work very well, and we need to do something else, and we need not to have elected officials directly involved in it. But I'm still looking at this one, and at some point I'll announce my position on it.
Okay. What would you like your legacy as governor to be? And even though you've not been charged with anything in connection with HB 6, your name has been repeatedly mentioned in connection with it. Do you feel like all of the turmoil about HB 6 will somehow tarnish your legacy?
Well, first of all, I think anybody who stays up at night worrying about their legacy isn't doing their job very well. So I've got enough things to worry about. What I do worry about every day, and Fran can tell you this, is my focus every day is I only have so many days left as governor. And there's things that I want to get done and things that I want to get done. There's things that we have started that I want to not complete, because you never complete things, but I want to see us make great progress. What we're doing, for example, in regard to reading in the state of Ohio, something that Fran is doing. She now has over 60% of the kids in the state of Ohio 0 to 5 who are getting a free book in the mail from Valley Park and Imagination Library. 400,000 books go out every month, but we want to see that grow. Also in regard to literacy, what we call the science of reading. Here again, this is an area where we have said we respect local control, and local control of schools is vitally important, and it's our legacy in Ohio, it's our culture in Ohio, it's our law in Ohio. But there's an area where we know what works, the jury is returned. As a former prosecutor, I'd say the jury's back. We have a verdict. The verdict is that the science of reading is how you teach kids to read. Now, the legislature, my request has passed that. Now we're implementing it, but we got to make sure it gets into every classroom in the state. And so I've been traveling around the state a lot and doing what we can to see that happen. So I don't worry a lot about the legacy. I think if you want to, I think if you go back to my time starting as a county prosecutor and the state senate and Congress, if there's one consistency in one issue where there's been a focus, it's been on children. And that's not all a governor does, but it's something that's very, very important.
There's another voter reform bill or voting reform bill at the legislature that would make it harder to vote, kind of change the process. But most people agree, and I think you agree with them, that there's not voter fraud, a lot of it in Ohio. So will you support it? Do you think that on balance that we need more voting reform?
I think the burden of proof is on those who say that we need to change the law. When I signed the last reform bill, I said, as far as I was concerned, we're done. Now, if there's new facts that come up or new problems that come up, then we can look at that. Now, I haven't looked at the bill, but that's my general attitude is, and look, here's the good news. We do voting in Ohio pretty darn well. And we do it because, frankly, Republicans are looking at checking on Democrats, and Democrats are checking on Republicans, and we do it right at the precinct level. When you go into there, you've got someone, many times you don't know who they are, or you don't know which party they are. There's a Democrat sitting there, there's a Republican. And you do that all the way through, and it works. And it works whether the Secretary of State's a Republican or a Democrat. So we have a system that works in Ohio. And barring some, piece of evidence that I see, and you're always subject to analyzing the facts, I guess I don't see any compelling reason to change it.
Okay. You said after the November election, the voters have spoken when it's come to abortion. Do you think that legislation should be passed to settle what's legal and what's not, instead of waiting for courts to work it out? And that will take, the court system will take a lot of time, cost a lot of taxpayer money. Is that the right way to go, or should the legislature pass a law?
Well, first of all, I respect the judicial system. I don't always agree with the decisions, but I respect it. And so anybody can walk into a courthouse in Ohio today and file a lawsuit about any law today. And they have every right to do that. And we have to respect the process. And so I respect that process. Look, I am pro-life. I believe that we're dealing with a human life here. What I said at the time when the vote was cast, and 57% of the people on that particular issue at that particular time, the way it was phrased, voted for expanding abortion rights. I said, look, I accept that. We have to accept that. We are a country of the rule of law. All debates, though, in this country always continue, and they never end. And so we'll continue to see debates. We have laws in the state that were there when Roe v. Wade was fully in effect. Those laws are still in effect today. So, I see no necessity to remove those laws, if that's what the question is.
Yes, so you're talking about, to follow up, you're talking about the waiting period, you're talking about the information being given.
Look, we lived with those, whatever position you have in regard to abortion, we lived with those during the period of time when there was no restrictions. And now Ohio voters, through their Ohio Constitution, have decided basically to go back to that in Ohio. And I guess I don't see we lived with it before, and I don't see any reason to change that at this point. But again, that will be something that will have to be worked out in the system that we have. I think that, as the discussion about abortion continues, and it will continue. I think one of the things that's very, very important is that we do everything in our power to assist a pregnant mom who is facing a difficult situation for any number of reasons. One of the things that we started doing when I became governor in my first budget is we increased home visiting. We have a program right now that we're expanding in regard to nurses going to visit mothers. So that mother, when she ultimately, originally makes a decision, does she carry the child, does she have an abortion, should know that she's going to get help. And so we have to continue to do more in that particular area so she can feel comfortable about that. It is, if you think about, and we had a good week this week. I told you at the table in our family, we had our oldest grandson got married on Saturday, and on Wednesday morning we had our newest grandson born. And so, but I just, when you think about a mom bringing a child home, a mom and dad bringing a child home, or a mom, whatever her circumstances are, particularly if she's not had a child before, and maybe she doesn't have a lot of support, that has to be a very frightening thing. It's a newborn baby. And so giving her the assistance that she needs makes eminent sense for us, all of us, because we want that child to develop and be able to live up to his or her God-given potential. And we know that the first few years of life are absolutely the most important. And we also still have in Ohio, a high infant mortality rate. We have particularly among African Americans, but it's not great among everyone else. And so we have to continue to do things to improve that. And one of the ways we do that is to get help to the mom when she's early as possible in her pregnancy. And we've done a lot. We need to do more.
And incidentally, some of that was in your State of the State speech, especially the nurses visiting. And you'd like to have that statewide, right? That program.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are just things that we know will make a difference. I mean, you take the first 5 years of life, just on dollars and cents, and that's not how we look at it, but on dollars and cents, the investment we make in that first 5 years of life are the most impactful and have the most impact in anything else that we can do. It doesn't mean we forget the child and all the things we're doing with career tech and college and other things, but those first few years are just vitally important. We all know that. That's what all the evidence shows.
What legislation has been passed and signed in, have you signed into law that you think is the thing you're most proud of? And is there something that you would like to have the legislature pass and sign into law before you leave office?
Well, I'm not bashful. I keep telling, I keep talking about things that I want. I mean, I'll go back to something I said a moment ago. If you want to see how to save the most lives, the easiest way, pass a seatbelt law. What we have today is it's not a primary seatbelt law. The officer cannot pull someone over for not having a seatbelt. It has to be another offense. The states that have switched to that, you will see almost an instant increase in the use of seatbelts. Part of it's education, but we've done a lot of education, and so we can certainly save a lot of lives in regard to that. But I think we have to continue. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet is quality. Really everything about the quality of life. There is no better place to live and raise a family and grow a business than in the state of Ohio. One of the reasons is we have 75 state parks that are free. And we saw that the people going into those state parks during the pandemic went up dramatically. And people either rediscovered or discovered for the first time their state parks. And so we just, again, one of the things that we have done, it's kind of gone unnoticed unless you camp or unless you go to one of our state lodges. The infrastructure had really deteriorated. And we have put, again, with the legislature's support, we have built that back up. And so these are some of these things that we really have to do. But if you look at, Joe, it's not so much laws, although there's certainly some laws that we could list that I probably want the legislature to pass. But it's mostly how do we do these things? How do we make sure that children can read? I mean, it's the implementation. It's mental health. How do it all goes back to wanting every child to live up to their God-given potential. I mean, I look at things as a parent. I look at things as public policy as a grandfather now. And what you want for your own children and your own grandchildren is what I want for every child in the state. And that is, I want them to get excited about something, have a passion for something, and then have the help to get the skills that they need to be able to do that during their lifetime. I mean, you think as a parent, that's what you want, You can't dictate what your child's going to do or what business they're going to go into, a profession, but what you want them to find something. And so part of our challenge is to give these kids the options. There are too many kids today that don't see what all options there are. And we're really working very, very hard to expand that. And our schools are really focusing much more on it today to give these kids all the options that they have so they can find something to get excited about. Those are the things that motivate me and get me excited.
Now, you're talking about kids, motivating them, keeping them here, but we're seeing a brain drain still. We see young adults who graduate college, people who maybe have lived here all their lives, and they go to other places because Ohio is not considered to be cool. It doesn't have the cachet. I'm sorry, it just, you talk to students who move out of state and they'll tell you they go someplace else because it's cool. What are you doing to make sure Ohio is cool, and how are we going to get the kids back?
You're asking that to a 77-year-old, right? You're supposed to make it cool. That is, by the way, a word I knew when I was growing up. So, cool, yeah.
It's
cool.
probably passé too.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Joe, that's the right word, but anyway. Look, kids are going to kind of do what they do, in a sense. But our job is to, when that child goes away to Chicago for a while, make sure there's a job here in the field that they're excited about. They're going to go away for a while. Some will. But it's what we have here. And, bringing Intel to Ohio, I told our team we are one of 40 locations. We're fighting with 39 other ones we're fighting with around this country. But I told our team, and everybody said, oh, we're going to bring this many jobs and we're going to have many suppliers that are coming. Yeah, that's all important. But what's also important, what's important about getting Intel here is it sends a signal. This is an industry of the future. It's an industry of now, but it's also of the future. And I said, if we get Intel here, and it wasn't a sure thing until right in, literally, we got the letter on Christmas Eve. They were coming. But the signal it sends is something's going on in Ohio. There's something pretty good in Ohio, or Intel that had all these choices would not have gone to the state of Ohio. Let's talk about our colleges. If you talk about, and it's not that all the new jobs are college jobs. You look at Intel's jobs, I think over half of them are not college jobs. So it doesn't mean you have to go to college. But what businesses look for when they come into a state is, can I find the workers? And you have to have a whole list of the right workers. And one company that came in here was already here, and we're fighting to keep them here in Ohio. It's actually Sherwin-Williams. One of the last questions they ask is, how many PhDs in chemistry do we produce a year? And we told them, and we have a lot of them that we do. So if you look at colleges, we have an abundance of colleges, not just our 14 four-year public schools, but our private schools, our independent schools. They're scattered all over the state. we are a net importer by a big margin of college students. And by that, I mean we bring more kids come in here every year to go to college than go out from Ohio to other states. That does give us a competitive advantage. And our job has to be to show the ones that are coming in from other states that there's a job here for you. There's a life here for you. Some fall in love, and that's helpful as well. But there's also a job here, and that is something very important. The data shows, and this is kind of common sense, the average college student, when they graduate, their first job is either within 60 miles of where they went to college or within 60 miles of where their home is. So we just got to get more of these kids to stay, and we're having a lot of them stay. It's having a quality of life, and we have a great quality of life in Ohio. And I'll talk about it for a minute. No matter where you live in the state of Ohio, you're near a major city, and you can live in a rural area if you want to. You can live in the suburbs, or you can live in that city. But within that city, whatever that city is, are great arts. There's zoos. There's theater. There's major league sports. There's everything that anybody wants within driving distance of virtually every single place in the state of Ohio. Think about it. We are a state of city-states, and with major universities in virtually every one of these major cities. So quality of life is good. The jobs have to be there. We're creating jobs every day in Ohio. Our challenge, as I said, I'll repeat it, is finding workers to fill those jobs. And so, but we can do this, and we can do it. So everything is here. I can't change February in Ohio. I can't do it.
I wish you could.
I can't do it. But, we have just so many things. So look, I'm optimistic about how we're doing. I'm optimistic about our future. We just have to keep doing these things. We have to continue to be aggressive about getting companies to come. We have to keep taxes reasonable. We have to go after these companies and continue to go after them as we have very, very hard. We have a competitive advantage. We have what's called Jobs Ohio. I don't take credit for Jobs Ohio. I've worked with it for 5 years. John Kasich and the legislature created it. And it gives us an independent group to go after and bring companies in. I appoint the board. There's a relationship here. But it gives us a competitive advantage that to my knowledge, no other state has. Anyway, a lot of good things going on in Ohio. So I guess I don't accept the premise that we're not attracting people to come to Ohio, and we are, and but we have to continue to do that. And again, the focus has to remain on education. It has to remain on education.
Well, Governor, thank you. It's the CMC's longstanding tradition to take audience questions. So we'll now move to questions from our live stream and our in-person audience in a few minutes. If you have a question, please make your way over to the microphone now. If you're watching online, please type your questions in the chat. But before we take audience questions, panelists, Governor, I have one more question for you. You mentioned sports teams. I know you're a big Cincinnati fan. I'm a Cleveland fan. We have the sports teams there, and the capital budget's coming up. And we know that our sports teams are going to be asking for money that will benefit them. Where do you stand on using taxpayer dollars for things like sports stadiums or new arenas, things like that?
Well, I'm not against it in principle. We've done it before, and I could give you all the reasons. And one of the main reasons is the quality of life, and what makes, if you like sports, it makes things exciting. Just ask anybody who lives in Cleveland, and what they talk about all week during football season. And actually 12 months a year they talk about the Browns, but at any rate, look, it's fun. The challenge that we have in Ohio, we have an abundance of sports teams, and that's a great thing in many sports, major league sports, soccer, hockey, football, basketball, baseball. It's great. But that's also a challenge when you look at state tax dollars going to those teams, because when you do something with one stadium and one team, that obviously creates a desire all the way through to do it multiple times. And that is what the legislature and I have to be cognizant of and think about as we look at kind of one-off proposals. What does this do to every other team in the state? We approved, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, maybe a year ago, work that was being done on the Guardians Stadium. And as I recall, it was about $30 million. That is consistent. That occurs, every X number of years. I forget how many years it's been since the Guardians ballpark was built, but it was kind of the first major one. That is, if you look at what's happened in the past, that's probably within the ballpark of what has happened in the past. Once you go way beyond that, then, we got another discussion, I guess, so.
Well, thank you, Governor. And now Doug Buchanan with the CMC is curating questions from our live stream audience. For those of you here with us in person, please join Doug at the microphone. Doug, what is our first question?
Jo, thank you very much, and thank you to Governor DeWine for being with us today. A couple of just guidelines before we start this. I know many of you have questions, so please do make your way over here to the microphone to ask your question. If you're watching on the live stream, please type your question into the chat. Keep in mind that great questions at CMC actually have three things in common. They promote civil discourse. They can be asked in just a few seconds, and yes, they do end with a question mark, so thank you. I'm going to start by combining two similar questions together. This is from Jason Moore and Heidi Christman. Regarding Ohio's opioid crisis and the creation of the One Ohio Recovery Foundation, how can we ensure that impacted families and their children receive adequate funding from One Ohio to make right what has been so tragically wrong for so many families? What will the legacy of your administration be as it pertains to families and children impacted by the opioid crisis?
Look, this is a horrible, horrible tragedy, a tragedy that continues in Ohio and across the country. Some of the recent numbers look better, but it's just horrible, horrible tragedy. We did something in Ohio that I don't believe was done in other states, or if it's been done, I think we were the first state to do it. We had all these settlements that were occurring, and it was not just Ohio suing. And by the way, when I was Attorney General, we were the second state to file suit. Mississippi had done it. We were the first major big state to do it. I'm proud because as soon as we did it, we started seeing other states do it. But it wasn't just the states. It was cities were doing it. It was even townships doing it. It was villages doing it. And so when I started looking at this and thought, this doesn't make a lot of sense, in the sense that, yes, there are victims in that township, there are victims in that village, there are victims in that city. They should be compensated. But some of these communities are going to get $300. I mean, it didn't make a lot of sense. And so what made sense to me was to try to put that money together and make a fund. And we had a lot of meetings about it, and I won't go through the long process, but we ended up with an agreement. And the agreement was, as I remember, that I think 55% of the settlement money was going to go to what we called One Ohio. Now, that's not something I control. One Ohio is made up of representatives from every single part of the state. And they are now in the process of taking the first settlement money and getting applications and making decisions about how that money should be spent. They will make that decision. I won't. It'll be representatives from every region of the state. My guidance to them that they don't have to follow at all, but I did talk to them when they first met, and I said, we don't want to spend this money that comes in 2 years and then look up and we still have a problem and we don't have any money to spend on other than, what the legislature would do. I said, you need to make the decision how fast to spend this money. You need to make the decision about how to invest this money. What I didn't want to do and what scared me was what we did with tobacco settlement. And that money was used for good things, but it wasn't used for cessation. We still have one of the highest smoking rates in the country, and we don't have any money that's dedicated to it, really. I just thought that was a mistake. So I thought, I didn't want to do that. And so what I wanted to do is, with the opioid problem and addiction problems, be able to spread that money out. I also asked them, I said, look at doing some innovative things that have not been done before. I said, I don't know what those are, but you will have the resources to do that. And you need to take a good hard look at what really would be very innovative and that might have a huge impact that has not been tried before. And so it's up to them to make those decisions. I think it was right to do it with there's still money going to cities and others is going to this one fund that is going to be there, and is in fact controlled by people from all over the state.
Governor DeWine, thank you for focusing on the youth and especially for the Ohio Rise program that focuses on children's mental health. I lost my own daughter to addiction, and I have been raising her son. I have noticed a tremendous gap in resources, especially for the children impacted by parental addiction. These children are prone to genetic disposition to addiction, and many suffer from PTSD and trauma, as my grandson does. The gaps inspired me to start my own nonprofit, Keys to Serenity, 7 years ago, to support these children. However, we need more. We need more programs. And my question is, what is a plan that Ohio has to help support these children that are impacted by parental addiction? These are the innocent victims in the epidemic.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very sorry for your loss. Yeah. We are doing a lot of things for young people who have had trauma. Trauma could be caused, obviously, by many different things. One of the things I think you mentioned, if my hearing is correct, is Ohio Rise. One of the things that we have done is really focused on children who have many times multiple problems, usually a mental health problem. It could be other problems connected to that, many times caused by trauma. What we've seen with some of these children is that the extent of the damage that's been done to them makes it very difficult for them to find a home. Many times they're in a group setting, which we think for most kids is not the best way to do it. So we put some real resources into expanding and trying to grow more foster parents, people who are willing to do that. We also had the situation where some kids, many parents, because of the financial burden of that child and because of their multiple problems, they literally had no money to be able to take care of the child. And so we were seeing parents that were literally giving their child over to the state. And we wanted to stop that as well. And so again, Ohio Rise is a funding source through Medicaid that we are expanding more and more kids every single day. So we're going to continue to target kids who have the most, are the most, been impacted the most, who have the most multiple problems. I don't know that we've ever said we're going to, and we may have, but specifically said, if you lost a parent, we're going to do this. We've talked about those things. We may have done something, but I think any child in that category is going to get somehow impacted by some of the things that we've done. But I'm very interested in what you're doing. And if you can see me afterwards, give me some more information. We would like to follow up, see what you're doing, and also see what else we could do. We have grandparents all over this state who are raising their grandchildren. And in some cases they've lost a child. In other cases, the child is not in a situation because they're an addict. They're not in a situation to have their children. So it's a huge, huge problem. We've done different things, but I'm happy to listen and eager to listen to what you have to say. So thank you.
Governor William Murdoch with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, or MORPC. Thanks so much for being here today. We appreciate you having the conversation with our region. Right out of the gate as governor, you focused on getting more resources for transportation, and roads and bridges and things are being built in local governments. The state's been more active in this. You also focused on distracted driving, and we've been a strong proponent of that, and we know that lives are being saved on our roads because they're in better condition and because of distracted driving laws. You mentioned seatbelts. As we're thinking of the last few years of your term, there's a lot more need for transportation, everything from more roads to support economic development, passenger rail, transit, trails, more roads. And what are your priorities as you're thinking about the next 2 years?
Well, I'll start with trails because I'm just coming off a trip in our Appalachian counties. We set aside, asked the legislature to do something historic in regard to our 32 Appalachian counties. One was to set aside $500 million for those communities to come up with their own plans. Many of them came back and said, we want to expand our trails. And I was talking to two of our directors this week, and I said, we need to do a better job letting people know where these trails are today. Because we have phenomenal trail system, and it's going to get better with this additional money. We just announced, I think yesterday, additional money that went out for sidewalks. One of the concerns that we should have is the number of pedestrians who are being killed. This is happening all over the state. It's a real concern. And so again, tying these in with sidewalks and giving people a place where they can walk, but also doing things that people want to ride bikes, but they're not directly into the traffic. When I became governor, the first big hurdle we had to face was when I looked at the numbers and the money that was coming in for the Ohio Department of Transportation and also to our local governmental entities in regard to roads. And it was a disaster coming at us like a freight train. And we did something. I asked the legislature to do something that no one ever wants to do, and that is to raise the gasoline tax. And I didn't get everything I wanted, but we got a significant boost in that, which frankly, thank heavens we have that. Thank heavens the legislature did it. Because that's enabled us to do some of the things that we need to do. I also set aside and told Jack Marshbanks, who does a great job heading up ODOT and his team, I said, I want to set aside a significant amount of money, and we've done this in the hundreds of millions of dollars for projects that are just safety projects. Every one of us, no matter where we live, we know of a intersection, bend in the road, something where we say, why in the world don't they fix that? Someone's going to get killed there, or 3 people have already died there. Well, we're they, and as I told Jack, we're they, and we need to set aside money to go into those communities and fix those problems. Now, we haven't fixed them all, but we've fixed an awful lot of them. And so, these are all the things that we're doing. As far as the passenger rail, look, this is studies going on. We took the next step. I said, yes, we will take the next step with the federal government to have the study. And I don't know how that's going to turn out. It's got to be something that actually works and something that is viable. But we're going to see after the study is done.
Hello, Governor. I have a question. In a lot of the research, I'm a policy analyst, by the way, and in a lot of the research that I do, I look at behavioral health disparities that exist. And I've noticed in my research that there are significant disparities in Appalachian and rural regions, as well as urban regions of the state. What do you propose is a solution to bridging that divide that exists in those communities to help address the totality of issues that are affecting Ohioans in the state? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not going to tell you everything that we're doing because we don't really have time. But one of the things that we have seen schools do, And we have now put over $60 million that we announced. Again, this was kind of the competitive grants that this is part of the half $500 million that we set aside for Appalachia. But we've seen it in cities as well. And that is something that really works, that can increase the health of the children in the school, but can also increase the health of the community, is when you put a clinic, a real clinic in a school. And I was in a school the other day. They have 2 entrances. They have people from there's a rural area, Pike County. They have an entrance where the kids from school can go in and get treatment during the day. They also have a place where the community can come into. They have in that particular school, is about 50-50. And the reason it works, in my opinion, is that in most communities, a place where people are very, very comfortable is their local school. And part of healthcare is finding places where people are comfortable. It's not just actual access, but it's real access. And if you're not comfortable going to a place, or you feel strange going there, you don't go there. And so schools are someplace where we go for basketball games, football games, spelling bees, and we go there to school parent-teacher conferences. People are used to going to their local school. And so when there's a clinic actually in that local school, it works. And the economy actually works. The dollars and cents can work. The other thing that we're doing in regard to site, and I think I talked about this a moment ago, but we have to do a better job. We got too many of our kids. You talk about reading, we got too many of our kids who have been found that they need an eye exam and don't get the eye exam. So all of these things that we're doing, not just in Appalachia, but we need to do them in our cities. We need to do them throughout the state.
Governor, thank you. We have about 2 minutes left for one final question. In an era marked by heightened polarization and contentious debates, how do you envision fostering a culture of civility and constructive dialogue in Ohio, particularly in our political landscape and public discourse?
Well, as governor, I work at it every day. I'm not always successful, but I work at it every day. And I try to remind all of us, myself included, because we all gotta sometimes we have our uniform on and we get in debates and we, battle these things out. But in the end, if you look at the basic things, we all agree on the basic things. Pretty much. Importance of children, the importance of having them well educated, importance of making sure they have good health care, keeping people safe on the highways, making sure our water is good, making sure we have state parks. Look at all the issues that we really agree on. And again, even though, people in the legislature have different opinions among themselves many times, there's been a consensus on these issues, and we've been able for 5.5 years to drive these issues. And again, it's because there's so many things that we have in common. And yes, there are going to be things we fight about. Look, I know that there's a ton of people in this room who disagree with me on abortion. I know there's people in this room who may disagree with me on other issues. But if you look at the things that impact people's lives every single day, most of the issues, we can find a place to come together. I did that when I saw that in the United States Senate. I can't speak of the Senate today. I haven't been there for 20 years. But when I went into the Senate, one thing someone in politics has to be able to do is count. And in the United States Senate, with 100 members, you don't get a bill you can pass a bill with 51 votes, but you can't get it up for 51. You got to get 60. And what that causes everybody to do is to work across the aisle. And so I saw that can in fact be done. I did it. I did a lot. And we've been able to do that here. If you look at the state of the state, Joe, you're talking about the state of the state. Yeah, Democrats complain that I lift some things out, maybe, but I didn't hear them complain about what we want to do with schools. I didn't see Republicans complain about that. I didn't hear them complain about foster care. These are not things that we have to fight about. These are things that we just have to get done. It's not getting stuff done is what irritates people, I think, more than the other things. We got to get things done. And that's what I tell my team every day. Our time's running out. We got to get things done. And that's what I think most voters expect. And whether they agree with me on everything or not, I'm sure they don't. You know, as Fran says, you know, people who are married don't necessarily agree on everything. We don't always agree, but I think we can agree on we got to get things done. And there's some big picture things that we got to continue to work on. So thank you.
Well, speaking of getting things done, Governor, we'd love to have more time to talk to you, but I'm getting the wrap-up signal from Doug. So I'm going to turn this back over to Deb Hackathorn right now.
Thank you, Jo. I hope you all feel inspired and you'll join me in looking forward to watching the governor make Ohio even more cool over the remainder of his second term, right? And get things done. Please join me in thanking our sponsors for today's forum: ACT Ohio, Cardinal Health, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, The Ohio State University, Public Sector Consulting, and WOSU Public Media. And thank you to the presenting sponsor of our live stream, the Center for Human Kindness at the Columbus Foundation, and our live stream partner, the Columbus Dispatch. And of course, our host here, the Ellis. A very special appreciation today to today's speakers, Governor Mike DeWine and Jo Ingles. Please make plans to attend next Wednesday's forum, entitled Thriving Minds, Solving Ohio's Mental Health Crisis. Timely topic based on your questions. We'll feature a panel of experts you'll want to hear. Please don't forget to scan the QR code at your table to share your thoughts about today's forum with us. Thank you again for being here. Have a wonderful afternoon. We're going to do a photo, Governor. Thank you so much.